And all right, it says that we're live. Odie,
All right. Hey,
what's up?
Scott.
What's going on? You're in Lagos still, or did you move?
I'm still in Lagos. I'm still in Lagos. Happened since we last talked. It's been a while. It's really been a while. So
This has been 6 months or longer.
yeah, it's longer. It's
Okay.
longer. The,
What's
so the past
what,
6 months, yeah,
what's been up? What's happened since then that you're allowed to talk about?
a lot, really. I got a job. I told you I got a job for a company in the Netherlands, and visa problems, man. So it didn't quite work out. So I now, you know, kind of resigned to my fate, sort of, until things started looking up. I think Don Syme, uh, he put like some of my code on his slides and all of that, and all of a sudden the thing went like I wouldn't say viral, but like I got a lot of attention from that.
Outside
And
of the F Sharp conference? Because I remember he put both of our screenshots up there.
yeah, he did, yeah. So that
Okay.
was what led to the F Sharp conference. So I think Thomas Patrick Check reached out to me and was like, "Hey, would you like to come on the F Sharp conference?" I can imagine me, it just blew my mind. I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was interesting, Sha. It was interesting. I did some work on the F Sharp compiler. Um, it's been a very, very intense 6 months. You know, right now I got another job anyway, but this one is remote sharp, which is even closer to my heart. I was really, yeah, yeah, I was really happy about it, and we've been doing a lot of stuff. We did a lot of crazy things. It's a Swiss company, so yeah. So I got to see and I got to work with some really smart people. Let me tell you, man, F Sharp community has some really smart guys. Like I don't know how to explain it, but man, the kind of projects we worked on, using some of like cutting edge technology like Kubernetes, like Elasticsearch, like you know,
So
uh,
let's take what you just said. You
yeah,
said that the I don't know if you said community or industry has a lot of brilliant people.
yeah,
My personal experience, and I
mm,
think I've been working in my career for like I don't know, it has to be like around 15 years now.
mm,
Is there's not many teams that I have the pleasure to work on that I'll just be brutally honest that I have a deep amount of
mm.
respect for.
Really? Okay. Actually, I meant this for like F sharp. Oh, I wasn't saying like in general. Like my experience anyway with meeting like pure F sharp teams is that they're usually it's usually the people who are really smart that kind of gravitate towards F sharp.
And they
And yeah,
care. They care.
and the yeah,
So like
yeah.
the last team that I worked on where like I had a deep amount of respect, admiration.
Mm,
To your point, it was when I was in Harris Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and it was an F sharp team.
yeah.
There's not that many F sharp teams in the United States of America. And in Europe, I'm sure that there's probably way more, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, they had mandatory automated tests
Mm,
anytime you checked in code. Like they just understood. They got it. You know what I mean?
mm,
And a lot of shops that I work at, I feel like, and I don't know, maybe I can't say this with humility, so it is what it is. A lot of shops that I work with, I feel like I'm just in a circus, and there's things that I have to advocate that I shouldn't have to advocate.
okay.
I shouldn't
Yeah.
have to hold hands, and because the majority of time I'm not brought in as a leader, right?
Mm,
Whether it's lead developer or architect, then I'm viewed as like not a team player. And I mean, I've had this conversation a lot of times about my issues with this whole team player thing. But I just felt it was interesting that you were saying that it seems like in regards to when you pick, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but when you pick your language, you're picking your community.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I think this is like the first time I've ever like worked with a team where I'm like really putting a lot of effort, you know. But it's good. It's good. Like I can't even begin to stress how much I've learned in the past 3-4 months. I've learned more in the past 3-4 months than I've learned in the past 1 year, and it's crazy. Like it's really crazy. Like
Specifically with this company or just in general?
yeah, with this company.
Okay.
Because part of the reason is, you see, uh when you're doing something, like when you are like doing the same project over and over again, right? You don't really learn new things. Instead, what you do is you just hello.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm here.
yeah. Instead, what happens is you're just honing or specializing in doing this thing over and over again. So most apps we build are CRUD apps and so on and so forth, and we build it in a specific kind of way, and we deploy it in a specific kind of way, and it belongs to, you know, the users are expected to use it in a specific kind of way, you know. But when you step, right, you try something totally different, and you see how people assemble applications in a wildly different way and all that. Like it forces you to rethink some of the assumptions you made, you know. Like for example, let me give you an example. Like there's an app we're building, and the way I've always I started programming was I would write my code, build DLLs and stuff, ship it over to
Hold up,
some
Odie.
server that's running some.
1 second. The bandwidth is kind of choppy. I'm going to turn off my video and just have my image. I'm not sure if that's going to help or not, but I'm still listening.
It's fine. All right. So I was saying, like, you know, the way we build DLLs and EXEs and whatever, we zip it, we move it to a web server somewhere, and there will be a web server software running, and we just pour the raw binaries there, and it serves the content, right? That's how we've done it. That's how I've always done it from my PHP days down to .NET days. But when I joined the team, right, I now discovered that they were using containers, right? So essentially what would happen is we would write like little microservices. Each microservice was like isolated. We'll build them up into containers, then now ship them over to Kubernetes cluster. And I tell you, Kubernetes is a beast of a software. Like it's not a joke, you know. So it goes there. Kubernetes is responsible for orchestrating the containers, making sure that they are always available, handling networking, routing, and all of that. And the recent one I learned was that, you know, if you wanted to have what do they call it? If you wanted to do like SSL certificates, or you wanted to do URLs, or whatever the case may be, like, you know, serving URLs to the outside world, that they had a separate thing called Ingress or so that helped route traffic into the Kubernetes cluster and all that. It's really fascinating stuff, and yeah, blew my mind. Blew my mind.
So assume that you're a back-end developer now, and this is, if anything, like, or is that, what industry are you in right now, or are you serving?
So it's a data science industry. So it has to do with scientific data, collating scientific data, sorting them, you know, that kind of stuff. That's what we do there, and it's really interesting stuff, really. Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to even talk about the project, so
no, I wouldn't. Don't.
yeah, but suffice to say, like, it's totally different from what I've been doing before, you know. And even though I'm currently working with these people part-time, right, I still have my regular 9 to 5 job, and you know, the two are conflicting. But ultimately I want to switch over to this new job probably by the end of this year.
Why don't you do it tomorrow?
Well, okay. So let me switch lanes a little bit to my daytime job. So my daytime job, I lead a team of developers. You know that, right? So recently we started a financial technology company, fintech company. So I was now tasked to lead that effort. And again, true to what you said earlier, I got there, got to the team, I saw what was on ground, and I was like, wow, I was just in dismay. Like the code was interesting to say, to put it kindly. So I just took it upon myself as a challenge to make sure that at least I clean up the whole process, I clean up the I just push the team in the right direction before I exit. That's my plan anyway. So yeah, I still plan. I will still leave. I'll still leave by December, but
You
you
know,
know,
they'll more. There's a high probability that you'll be the scapegoat when you leave. They'll just blame their problems on you because you're not there to defend your decisions.
yeah, that is also true. But um, in my case, what I want to do anyway is I want to be able to like demonstrate that the process works, right? Unit testing, continuous delivery, continuous integration, code reviews, and all of that. Like putting all that stuff in place, it's really I want to demonstrate it works. So if after I've gone, they say it's Odi that did this or it's Odi that did that, right? Like the records will speak for itself.
With humility,
That's
you left out an important part that I recently incorporated into my development.
what was that?
The heavy reliance on types.
Mm, mm,
So the combination of types and smart constructors,
mm.
that is something that I've recently started applying. And not to, well, yeah, let's just go off rail. Like it's amazing how you think you know it all until you
Mm,
get introduced to a completely new paradigm. And
yeah.
so, like, what's really interesting, and I've heard this, I can't reference who I heard this from, is with ML languages specifically, but this may apply towards anything that relies heavily on the compiler. Um,
Mm,
it seems as if in functional programming, but especially with ML languages, that you don't have to necessarily rely heavily on the implementation of a function. You
mm.
just look at the type signature, the function signature, and you
Yes,
know what it does. And
exactly.
so that's what I meant by, and I'm not sure if that was something that is so like incorporated into your software development game that, of course, like why do I have to be explicit about that? That was already like assumed. But for me, it's kind of brand new, and I've been trying to run away with that. This whole notion of specification as a library, because I can't think of a better name. But all right, I'm listening.
So, just to make it clear, you're talking about like instead of having like interfaces and all that, you just use like the function signatures to tell you what does a particular function do, where can you plug that function into, and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, at a high level. So, for example, for me, using types for everything. And also, so for example,
Mm,
I'm not sure if you're still on Twitter or like that, but almost every day I record about about an hour worth of video of me doing this long-term code kata. I'm building a
mm.
Uber app, but this is like a make-believe Uber app. So
Okay,
it's F sharp and Xamarin Forms. And
okay.
so I'm playing around with this idea of specification as a library, where you have a library that has no logic whatsoever.
Mm.
All it is I'm not sure if you're familiar with like domain driven design.
Yeah, yeah, I am.
Okay, so all it is ubiquitous language
Mm,
and domain specific operations, and that's it. There's no logic. There's only types. Your types are your I don't know, the nouns that are relative to that domain, and your
mm,
types are the operations, such as uh, request price, which takes a a type called pickup location, a type called destination, right? Or another operation as a type is request ride, right? It takes a pickup, a destination, but it returns a type called pending ride, right? There's a difference between a pending ride and another type called en route. There's a difference between en route and another type called ride ended, right? But all these can be parameters that, as types, that feed into other operations where you have to have the right type, and those types cannot be created arbitrarily. Those types are declared private or internal, and the only way that they can be created is through a smart constructor that will vet the arguments or the parameters and either return some or none, or something to that effect. So that's something I'm just now practicing, right?
Oh, okay, I get that. It's been a while, Scott. It's been a while. Like, I reached out to, so I traveled to Dubai earlier this year to learn about machine learning. So I went there. Although the course I did specifically was on Azure Machine Learning Studio, so they did teach me machine learning, but it was just mainly focused on like the tools in Azure. It wasn't like this is how machine learning really works from an internal perspective. So I got like a lot of the theory down, but I didn't have the like practical knowledge to be able to like use whatever tools I wanted to use. That would be equivalent to learning something like imagine learning programming, but you're learning through Visual Studio or something like that, right? So if someone was to tell you of another language or another like, or if they asked you to do it from command line, like you'd be stuck because you needed Visual Studio to, it's kind of like web forms. Web forms would be a good idea, I'm trying to say. So I now learned what was I saying? Okay, yes, I was learning about machine learning. So I now reached out to Matthias Brainbinder, and he was so helpful. It was essentially a mentorship program, so where he sat me down, explained the details and all that. And this thing you're mentioning, operations as types, right? He used that technique a lot in most of his machine learning samples. So what he would do is he would specify an operation, like what's called a feature. A feature is like a way of describing a data set or something like that. But he wouldn't describe that feature as a regular type. He would describe it as an operation that takes the raw data set and extracts a value out of it. And then he did some magnificent things. He did some really magnificent things with that. But suffice to say, like, we did a lot of cool stuff. Like, we did the neural networks, we did decision trees, decision forests, we did prediction algorithms, we did fraud detection systems, crazy stuff. And the interesting part was he did like 90% of it without using any library, which is just bonkers. Absolute bonkers. And I don't know, I think he organizes, because he's in the US at the moment, so he organizes like workshops and all. If you ever get the chance, I highly recommend you go and just check it out, because it will blow your mind, like seriously. So, but the reason I brought it up was because you were mentioning this idea of using types as a way of encoding operations and all that, and he used it a lot. So I remember when you were just describing it, and it reminded me of the tutorials he gave me.
Yeah, and so like when you think that you know a lot about how to build systems, then the important lesson that I've learned is when you get to that point where you think you know a lot, then maybe you should consider going into a completely different paradigm so that you can learn how other communities, or at least the leaders there, are interpreting, or for lack of a better term, coming up with techniques to build their systems. And you can just borrow from different paradigms. So I don't know, man. It's fascinating is the older I get, the stronger I become, mentally when it comes to like my creativity. The inverse is the aging process. the body. So that's the only thing that's effed up. But yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Me too. I've also noticed that like a few years ago, I used to be able to like focus for several hours at a time, like 6, 7 hours at a stretch without interruptions. Well, recent, I've only been able to manage like 4 or 5 hours, and I can tell that, yeah, age is starting to slow me down too as well.
Yeah.
But I still think that but what I've lost in terms of sheer tenacity and hard work, I've gained in terms of experience and efficiency. So I don't really need to type as much code as I used to before. When I was younger, I used to have like abstractions on abstractions of abstractions to solve a particular problem. And over time, I've discovered that, okay, you need to abstractions are good, but you need to have a sense of what level of abstraction is necessary, because the whole point of abstraction is to manage like changes, right? So you don't want a situation whereby if you are coding in assembly, for example, you wouldn't want a situation whereby if you wanted to change a particular block of code, you'd have to be going everywhere in your assembly, jumping with go to up and down to figure out what you need to change and effecting that change. So we invented C to make it easier to change source code. And of course, C is not the best. C has its own problems. We invented like OOP languages, and we are now at the functional level where that level of abstraction is now a lot higher. So I could, for example, abstract out my input output, right? Using something like async result, for example. Have you ever used that library before? Async result?
Oh, you're talking about F sharp. That's library?
Yeah, yeah, it's a library. Yeah, they have it.
Oh, I thought it was just. Oh yeah, I guess I'm confusing that with just the F sharp core async. No, I haven't used it.
So, to explain, it's almost like it's a combination of both the async computation expression and the result computation expression together. So, because if you think about it, whenever you want to do like input or output, and again, this is what I learned in the last 3 months. But if you think about it, like anytime you want to make an IO operation, whether to the network, whether to your hard disk or whatever, there are two key characteristics. First of all, you want it to be async,
I know
right?
one of them.
Because yeah, yeah, you want it to be async because you don't want that IO operation to block like your processing, right? And secondly, you want it to return a result. In other words, because it could throw an exception, right?
Yeah.
Anytime you talk to the outside world, it could throw an exception, it could be out of memory or whatever, right? So more often than not, you find yourself in a situation whereby you call some kind of IO operation and you get an async of result of T, right? Did in the library was to merge the two monads in quotes, if I permit me to use the M word, but they merged the two into one monad called async result. So if you called something that returned async of result of something, right, you could just use let bang on it without having to worry about, oh, is it going to be async and did it succeed or not and all of that. It just flows naturally. Let me see if I can send you the link so that you can see it. Async result F sharp. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very nifty tool. So anyway, but my point is that okay, when you have something like async result, right, it abstracts out a lot of the low-level details of putting a try card, of putting async await and all of that on input output operations. So with that in place, functional languages tend to raise the level of abstraction. So, for example, if you wanted to now change your implementation of how input output works for whatever reason, or you wanted to improve it, or you want to add your own login or something, you'd only just need to change that mode and you're done. So yeah, it's one of those things.
So I have a question for you outside of that.
All right.
Is when did you start taking software development personally?
Mm.
Was it ever since you were in school, I assume you went to college or something.
Yeah.
Like, when did all of a sudden it become a lifestyle and no longer just a 9 to 5?
I actually remember the moment when that happened. I remember the moment when that happened. It was actually a long time ago. What happened was I when I was in school, like I had learned HTML, CSS. So I wouldn't really call myself a developer back then. I remember downloading a C++ IDE and being totally lost. Not even understanding the syntax or anything like that. So anyway, long story short was I wasn't even sure then whether I was going to be a developer. It wasn't until I started dabbling into so many things. That was in maybe my first year. It was my first year, yeah. I dabbled into so many things. I dabbled into 3D modeling with Maya and 3D Max. I dabbled into beat making with Fruity Loops.
Fruit Loops, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to be. I was so serious about being a music producer at one point. I dabbled into um, AutoCAD. I dabbled into graphic design with Fireworks. I never really liked Photoshop anyway, but I was using Fireworks at the time, Adobe Fireworks.
With the exception of the last item you said, I mess with all the same stuff.
Really?
AutoCAD, because in high school I have a vocational certificate in mechanical drawing. So like AutoCAD, CAD Key were the CAD software that I would use. I remember my friends were into producing like beats, and so I remember trying to. I remember I had like a copy of their Fruit Loops, and I was trying to figure out how that stuff worked. And I remember I was thinking about going to video game school. And so I remember like I never messed around with Maya, but I know what it is. So yeah, that's interesting. All right, I'm still listening.
Yeah. So I even dabbled into film editing too. I started looking at Adobe. Was it Audition? No, it was Adobe. I tackled Adobe Premiere a little bit. Did a little bit of After Effects. Did a little bit of which other one was that? I think those are the major ones. I tried to see if I could do a film, using Maya, importing the models, rendering it, and all that. So it started becoming very overwhelming very quickly. But more importantly was at the same time, I also got Dreamweaver, Adobe Dreamweaver. So I had done a little bit of like website design, and knowing that I knew HTML, CSS already, I now had to learn JavaScript and PHP. So when I learned those two, I was like, dude, you have to pick something. You have to pick who you are going to become. Are you going to become a beat producer, or a CAD engineer, or whatever? So I remember vividly at the time that I was like, well, I do all these things. They are all fun, but nothing is as fun as writing code. And I was quite good at it at the time. So I said, this is what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to drop all the others. That was the moment when I became like where for me it wasn't about just, oh, I just want to be a job. It became a defining characteristic of who I currently am. So yeah,
that's what's up. I think I started taking software development personal. Like when I decided to make it a lifestyle, it was when I got my first full-time job. And then all of a sudden every time I would get bigger paychecks as a result of job hopping, my sickness for building systems just got magnified. And so like I remember I had moved from Cleveland to Florida, right, or Ohio to Florida, and I just remember I found out how much my supervisor was making, which was basically providing me instructions as he coded next to me as we built software together. And he told me that he was I already thought I was balling because I was making like, this is the first, I had moved to Florida as a consultant, and I had focused like a med student studying for the Windows Presentation Foundation certification, right? CE-502 or something like that.
Wow.
And I had got my first job in Florida, and holy crap, I was getting paid $60 an hour, and I was like, "Yo, I'm balling!" Like, and then I found out that my supervisor, right, aka to this day, he's my mentor, which is strange because now I'm mentoring him for him to get his next job because he's older. I found out he was making $80 an hour,
Wow.
and so that's when things got serious. Like, hold up, I thought I was balling because I was making $60 an hour. I know this guy's like probably 8 years ahead of me in regards to development. He's making
Mm.
$80 an hour. All right, so I need to be able to make $80 an hour in 24 months. So I just started. That's when like I started taking it personal, right? And then I learned of other people that were making $90 an hour, right? And I'm like, man, f that. I'm trying to get $100 an hour, right? And it just kept on like, I guess the competitiveness, in me,
Mm.
like it starts clicking in where like if I see other people are doing it, I first want to meet them and then I want to exceed them. And that's just, I don't know, I think that's a sickness when it's
Mm.
borderline being a hater when you really want to like, when you envy and then you want to like outdo. Like that's something that,
Yeah.
that's, I don't know. I've never been diagnosed with it, but that's my character. So
Yeah,
that's
well,
when I started taking things personal. When my bank account started rising because I knew more information. And that's when I
mm.
started building my presidential library of software development books, human psychology books, all that stuff.
Mm.
It just became very, very serious. It
Mm.
became that's when I decided to treat myself as my own business. So
Mm. Wow, that's incredible. For me, well, what started to really drive me was I think the first time I deployed a software, right, that I wrote and people were using it. I think that was what made it click for me because up until that time it was just demoware all over the place, you know. Uh, Even though I had gotten some small wins here and there before that. In fact, before that, once upon a time, I even dabbled into hacking too.
what's that
um,
called?
hacking.
Oh,
Like,
hacking.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, I remember because you see, man, Nigeria. Once upon a time, internet was like very, very scarce. Like it was difficult to get, and even if you did get, it was so expensive. And I was a student at the time, so I essentially started, because at the time, what was trendy was for people to be looking for like ways of hacking their internet service provider such that they could like browse the internet without having to pay, And at the time, still a student, I was eager to get some because everybody had it. They had some kind of trick or manipulation where they would essentially be able to bypass the billing. So I remember there was one called Z Freedom Browser or something. It used to anonymize your, and apparently the service provider did not, they didn't secure their systems very well. So if your traffic was anonymized, it didn't count against your data bundle or your bundle or whatever the case may be. So, but I now figured out that okay, what if I was able to encrypt my own traffic like by myself? So I built what is essentially my own VPN, if you will. And how I did that was I got some scripts, like I got a PHP script. I was able to write a PHP script that would do the encryption. I now deployed it on a web server, and I now had a proxy that was on my own system that would essentially receive the encrypted traffic and decrypt it back into like regular web pages and whatnot. So I now implemented what do they call it? Yeah. So after implementing that, I deployed it and it actually worked. And then it clicked that wow, software is like being a magician. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was it. That was one of the first moments when it clicked for me. But the real moment when it really clicked was when, I was developing applications for what do they call them? All these cyber cafes where people go to browse the internet. Although those things are extinct now, but I was developing software at the time for those people, and people are using it, and it was making sense. And that was when it now dawned on me that, look, typing all this scripting code actually has real life consequences, and you should be, you should be, you should take it seriously. Ultimately, yeah.
So the state didn't kick in your door when they found out that you hacked into free internet?
Nah, they didn't. They didn't. Well, because part of the reason is that Nigeria, we just a freestyle country. Honestly speaking, like, it's a free country. Long story short, you just do whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah. So, although right now, all fashion, because now internet is available, so the stress isn't worth it anymore. So people don't. In fact, people have not done it in a very long time. So that's why I feel free enough to say such things. Yeah.
What do you see in your future?
Future.
Let's say 24 months from now, where do you want to be versus, well, I'll just say that. Where do you want to be?
Okay, 24 months from now, I don't want to be in Nigeria anymore. Not because I don't love this place. I love this place to death. This is where I've grown up. But I feel like I would, this past 3 to 6 months I've spent with this foreign company, this Swiss company, has really opened my eyes. Like, as a software, really move my career forward. I need to, like, have some level of exposure. 4 months from now, I see myself, in Europe, somewhere in Europe, just doing the work, improving my skills, still doing F sharp, if possible, start increasing my contributions to, like, open source F sharp. Currently at the moment, I barely have time for anything. Even my blog to, like, put content up there. Of recent, that has even become even more difficult. It's only like maybe Twitter that I get the chance to once in a while. But yeah, I intend to just simplify my life, just simplify my position. Essentially, just quit one of the jobs, move to Europe, contribute more to the F sharp community. Because for me, the end game for me, where I would like to see myself, is maybe found 1 or 2 startups as for, then maybe do a little bit of consulting, and doing talks, conferences, stuff like that. Essentially, like Don Syme or Scott Hanselman, or any of those folks. That's for me. That would be a perfect situation in the next 12 to 24 months. Even if I don't get like 100% of that, even if it's 50% of that, I'll still be very happy. So yeah, that's essentially my plan.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to email the organizers of F Sharp Works, which I think is consulting, and ask them if I could try out for the team. And if they let me, I'll probably fail the first couple of times. But yeah, I want to do this. I want to do this for the next 24 months. I don't like dumbing down my skills.
Yeah.
And
so sorry to cut you here, but something also occurred to me, right? Also, working with these guys that I just mentioned, right? It kind of validated my choice of learning F sharp, because the kind of problems you are tackling are not by any means trivial problems. They are really hard problems. But having a stronger language was very helpful, even in writing correct code the very first time. That is for me more than enough justification to say, this F sharp thing, I'm ready to take it all the way. Like, I'm ready to do F sharp 100% full time, no distractions. And if I was building my own app, or if I was starting a startup tomorrow, F sharp all the way, no exceptions, you know. Yeah.
Oh, you gotta send me an invitation when you have your startup idea. Um,
Sure.
I
Mm,
was I was also strongly considering in the next 24 months
mm,
uh, trying to build something in Haskell. I don't know anything about Haskell right now, but I hope that from what I hear, that'll strengthen my FP skills, or hence functional programming skill set. Just like Elm
mm,
did when I went through that whole Nikesa thing, that Elm really helped me
mm,
out. You know, it was foreign, it was a part of a completely different ecosystem, and it kind of
mm,
reinforced my understanding of currying and a whole bunch of other FP concepts.
mm.
So it's just Haskell's not in Visual Studio, and I don't want to learn another IDE. And I never really understood the different editors that are out there, like Vim and stuff like that. So
Mm,
it took me a while to, believe it or not, learn VS Code. That's foreign to me.
mm.
So when I pick up Haskell, like that's going to be the biggest burden, is the development environment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was one of the things I faced too when I was learning Haskell. I don't know if I told you that I started with Haskell before moving to F sharp. Did I tell you?
No, I think I do remember stories of you listening to Jan Curry, whatever his name is, and he was saying how productive F sharp was, and that's why
Yeah.
that led to you trying to get out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so there was a very big gap. That was in 2000 no, that was 2013 when I heard Yang Kui talk about F sharp. Like, I was fascinated, but that like opened my eye to this language called F sharp. But at the time, I wasn't really serious about like coding in it or whatever. It wasn't until there was another guy that I think Ben Al-Bahari, who is a very revered C sharp developer, who mentioned Haskell as like gold standard of programming languages, and I was like, what? So I remember dabbling into Haskell, even getting a Lexa IDE. You know, the whole thing was just foreign to me. Eventually, I was able to start understanding how it worked, but then I now discovered that it's essentially good, but I wasn't productive in it. Like the kind of productivity you get with the whole Visual Studio and .NET and all of that stuff that we're used to, right? It's almost a whole new language. Now that doesn't mean that I couldn't have gotten productive in it. I could have, but that would be like learning all the fundamentals all over again. So I was like, instead of doing this, and even if I did learn it, right, I wouldn't be able to like apply it at the time, because how many people do you know that would be able to like have deployment infrastructure for Haskell, or web hosting stuff, or things like that. So that was when I now decided, okay, let me go with F sharp, since it's like the best compromise. It has the functional features of Haskell, and it's fully .NET, so you could deploy it wherever you want to deploy it, have and use the same libraries and tools that you are familiar with. Yeah, that's what actually brought me to F sharp. Really, is the tooling, the ecosystem. But the ecosystem was like a blessing in disguise. Like I didn't even know how good the F sharp ecosystem was until I actually started paying attention. And for me, those are the things that keep me with F sharp: the ecosystem, the tooling, the libraries, and so on and stuff like that. Not necessarily the language per se.
Do you actively rely heavily on the REPL? I don't.
Um,
I still use tests.
oh, you mean the F sharp interactive, right?
Yeah.
My position on this has changed a little bit. I now rely more on tests and all that, but yeah, I still use the REPL quite a lot. In fact, in machine learning, if you're doing machine learning, tests will not help you. Trust me.
Okay.
Like, I know what I'm saying. Maybe by the time you see Matthias course or something, you understand what I mean. Machine learning is not like software development. It's not like software engineering. It's more magic than engineering.
White magic.
Yeah, Yeah, white magic I'm serious. Is more white magic than engineering. In fact, there are some algorithms that when they are done, like when the model is done and all that, and it makes a prediction, and you ask the machine learning data scientist, why did it make this prediction? And his answer would be shrug emoji.
Wow.
I'm telling you, like, I don't know. It's like, but you coded this. How can you not know why it's doing it? You'll just be like,
like, because it's going through millions of different artifacts to make a decision. Like I read an intro book on it, and that intro book, it just had me put the book back down. Like it was just because there's so many different strategies, I think, for training your program to learn. And like it just became like it overwhelmed, Stack Overflow my cognitive load. Like it was just too much for me to keep up with. I just put the book down, and I'll pick it back up in a couple months and try to reread it, and hopefully I could get a little bit further. And this was just an intro. The formulas are the scariest. When they start showing formulas, my brain taps out. I have no control over it. My brain says hieroglyphics, tap out, and that's it. You can't talk me out of it. What's up?
Let me say something. This is why I'm still so grateful to like Matthias, is that the way he explained it, right? He understands all the molar, granted, but the way he explains it, like in constructs that you and I will understand, like loops, like iterations, like variables, and all blah 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 blah. Like, you know, explaining it from a programmer's perspective, right? And he does it so well that, in fact, okay, let me put it this way. He gave me some exercises to do, and the exercises, right? I kid you not, the very first exercise was, this is how you declare a variable. This is how you add two numbers. This is how you do this. I was like, this is junior grade stuff. Let me just skip all the way to the end and solve it. And what I quickly discovered was, oh my God, what this is. Move back one step. Oh, I don't understand what this is. Move back one step. And I went back to literally almost the beginning. I started following it from there. But by the time I was done, right? Like, for example, let me give you an example of an algorithm that he showed me, and I was like, what's the big deal? This KNN, K nearest neighbor, an algorithm. And all that algorithm is doing is just essentially map reduce. Finish. So, like, you know, there's a data set somewhere. You iterate over the data set. You get like the average, and you're looking for what record in the data set is closest to to the inputs that you are given, and now use that to make a prediction. You know, a very simple algorithm, but when they use all those scientific terms, it will be, and they show you all the crazy formulas around it, right? You will just be confused very quickly. But if I were to show you from a source code perspective, it would be like obvious. Essentially,
I think he produced a book on machine learning.
Yeah. Oh, was it his book you were reading?
No, I wasn't reading his book. Okay. This book had nothing to do with programming. It was literally an intro to machine learning at the highest level, without going into implementation details. But then it exposed some of the formulas, and it was trying to describe it, and I put the book down. So
I haven't read his book though. I think maybe I'll try it, but I would say you should check out his book, because his style to teaching it is completely unique, and he teaches it in a way that by the time you learn it, you feel like you have superpowers. That kind of thing. You know.
No, I'm not sure how much time you have, but I have a question that it's kind of dark, right? but I'm a curious person, and so I'm really interested because I'm really disconnected. Like I'm in the United States, you're in Nigeria, right? And so United States, I've been socially conditioned to buy into like a certain belief system. Okay. And I'm conscious of that, but there's things that I know I struggle with that isn't really reality when it comes to the rest of the world. Okay.
Okay.
Real talk is in Nigeria, right? Or on continental Africa, do you find yourself having to prove or demonstrate your technical know-how to help people more than you think you should?
That's an interesting question. Okay,
Based
so
on biases and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Honestly, I think from it does happen here, but it is a lot less pronounced, and it's a lot less. I believe, I don't know. I've never been to the US before, so I don't know what it's like to like work there, but I don't think it's that big of a problem here. So let me put that into perspective. When Scott Hanselman, I think he was explaining how he went to is it, I can't remember where his wife is from, but his wife is from a country here in Africa. He said he got there and he was shocked that like everybody there were like black people everywhere, black police, black politicians, black billboards, black everything. And he was like, wow, like, you know, for the first time, him being a white person, like he was
A minority.
Yeah, he was a minority essentially, and people were just giving him the look, you know, up and down and all that. And he was like, oh, so this was what it feels like to be a minority. The truth is here it's the same thing, right? Everywhere you have black CEOs, black CTOs, black policemen, black people in justices, black everything. So, you know, the whole my race has never really played a factor. Instead, what plays a factor here is actually your tribe. So depending on the kind of tribe you are in, because you see, we humans, we have a tendency to like
Click up.
to shield ourselves. Yes, exactly. To shield ourselves from people we consider foreign, you know. I remember the very first time I met a lady who was a Muslim, and based on the way I was conditioned growing up, right? When I found out, I think her ringtone was Allah Akbar or something like that. So when we were talking, we were having a good time and everything, and all of a sudden somebody called her, and I heard that the shock in my body, like it was obvious to her. She was like, why are you that prejudiced? And all of a sudden, and it was an instinct thing. It wasn't like I had any ill will towards her or anything like that, but it's just, you know, the way I was conditioned, brought up like a Christian and all of that. It was like an eye-opening moment for me. I was like, oh my God, I've actually been programmed. I've been coded. I have something in my BIOS that that responds to when I consider other, you know, and that was eye-opening. So, but here, what we have more of is tribalism. So, for example, if you are from a different tribe, you cannot be like a governor in a different state, that kind of a thing. I imagine in America, wherever you live, you're a citizen of that place, you can run for governor and it's all well and good. But in Nigeria, not possible. You know, you have to actually be a citizen, like not just a citizen, you have to have like ancestral heritage in a particular state to claim anything from that state. So it's one of those things I find interesting about what we have here. What we have here is tribalism, not racism at all. And it's even funny because I had a friend who was an albino, and when we were in school at the time, and we used to make fun of him. And one day he just turned to us and was like, "All of you are racist." And we started laughing, you know, because it had never occurred to us that you know, like we never treated him any differently, even though he was white in quote, right? So it was one of those things that was interesting to see that yeah, he was essentially a white man, but we saw him, he spoke like us, he talked like us, we ate, you know, there was that divide was not there. You know how people say they don't see color, you know, that kind of statement. You know, we could see that he's clearly of a different color, but he never seemed other to us. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
It never impacted your
your
interactions with him.
Exactly. So we would make fun of him the same way we make fun of every other person. We would play pranks on him the same way we play pranks on any other person. And you know, it's one of those things that it opens your eyes. And where it hit me was when I went to Dubai for the very first time. That was like 3 years ago, like 3 years ago. And I realized that, oh shit, we black people are the minorities. Like it never occurred to me before, because growing up in a place where everybody you know is black, everybody you've met is black, everybody you've ever seen is black, right? If you like just leave your country and go to other countries and now realize that we black people, you know, and they start giving you looks, you know what I mean? Start giving you looks and you're like, it's you guys that look funny, not me.
You know what's strange though? It's like we're like inverses of each other, meaning that like you're surrounded by black folks and you're black.
Yeah.
I'm wrapped in black, but for most of my college and professional career, I'm surrounded by white folks. And so like, you know, people pick up on that. They say, "Oh, Scott, you speak so well." Like, do you tell other white folks they speak well? Like, they're, you know, and like even like some of the black girls that I may hang out with, they'll make reference to it, like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm like, "I'm from Cleveland." What? And they're like, "Oh, did you grow up in a white neighborhood?" No, I just spent a lot of time with white people based on my profession and based on my study, because my own folks, they tend not to gravitate towards that area. And so, what does gravitate mean? I'm like, oh god. But yeah, it's kind of different, because like you're speaking like where you're from, you're not a minority. And so you haven't really been able to relate on the level that I have. I am a minority, but I'm just always surrounded by white folks, right? And so the people that pick up on that are black folks, you know, especially like from the inner city. They'll pick up on it immediately as soon as I open up my mouth. They'll hone in on it. So I just find it interesting.
But what do you think? Like, because I know we are going into a dark discussion, but just for the sake of, I can't remember who said, was it Plato or Aristotle that said that the feature of an enlightened mind is the ability to entertain thoughts without accepting them. I don't know if you've heard that before.
Say it one more time. You went out. You said entertain thoughts without what?
Accepting it. So like, if that one of the proof that someone is enlightened is the ability to, like, you know, just entertain a thought and reject it at the same time, rather than just rejecting it outright. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
I think so. It's kind of like dogmatism, if that's even a word. When you I think that's the definition of like devout, right? A devout Catholic. You're not going to accept anything that contradicts your existing belief system. You don't even want to entertain it for fear that you might be wrong, right? And that is called ignorance. And so
so let me get to what I was saying. Like, I've toyed around with an idea in my head that, like, I wanted to know, why is it that, you know, like, even we black folks, right? We don't want to, we don't have, should I say, the love for intellectualism is not as strong as, say, for example, the Asian community, or even the white folks and all that. I don't know if you've ever had that thought before. Like, if you're even in Nigeria here, like, if you're an intellectual, right, you have some respect, but people don't care, right? All right. And if you try to introduce something that requires I don't know if you like, I don't know if you get what you're getting what I'm trying to say. But if you're trying
Well,
to introduce,
I'm not
yeah,
sure
if
if
you're trying to,
my
yeah,
bad.
like,
I'm not sure if we're using the right language. So
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
difference between intellectualism, if that's a word, and
Mm.
curiosity, right? So I mean,
Curiosity.
if we're going to burn it down, let's burn down the house. White
Yeah,
folks run the world because they're very inquisitive. They run the
exactly.
world. They dominate this planet. They have dominion over this planet, and have conditioned other races to be racist against other minorities. I live in Miami. I experience racism down here, by people that are not white, right? Because they have
Yeah.
been conditioned. But I would say that when you talk about why is it that it appears that people of African ancestry amongst, and it's not just African ancestry,
Mm.
there's other ethnicities as well.
Yeah.
Why is it that, and there's another word, all right, and we got to pick our vocabulary or terminology. There's intellectualism, if that's a word. There's curiosity, and there's also consciousness, right?
Mm.
And so, why is it that it appears that people that look at me or look like me, why is it that in the media they're not marketed as being conscious of what
Mm.
really matters in this world, of how they're being taken advantage of, how
Yeah.
they're being depicted on television? I lived in the Philippines. I see, I've experienced, some racism out there. I've also know how they've been conditioned out there, or how some people have been conditioned out there. The skin whiteners, they don't want to get a tan at all. The billboards, the magazines, they all show extremely light skinned people, purposely, right? The music videos, they're all light skinned. I've been in Cuba. I've been in a lot of Caribbean places where the music videos, and I will trip on it till this day. The music
Mm.
videos do not represent the people in the Caribbean or Latin America. These music videos will always depict, with the exception of Sean Paul videos. Sean Paul is my hero, but these music
Mm.
videos will always depict these beautiful women being severely light skinned, as close to white as possible. But I guarantee you, when you go to Cartagena, when you go to Havana, Cuba, right? When you go
Mm.
to Trinidad, you don't see overwhelming, extremely light skinned people. You see people that are as dark as you and I. And it's just an
Yeah.
effed up society. And so I think the answer to your question, at least my my answer is, we've been conditioned this way. We've been
Mm.
conditioned to believe that it's not cool to be conscious. It's not cool to be curious, to seek answers, because then you get labeled a nerd, right? A
Mm.
geek.
Mm.
Now, thankfully, a geek is starting to become something that's popular, right? People say I'm a geek. I tend to call myself like an alpha geek. I'm analogous to a Romulan on Star Trek, right? But I mean, that's my interpretation.
Yeah, because this thing you're saying is absolutely true. Because okay, let me just give you a backstory so you can understand the context of why I said what I said. You see, here in Nigeria, right, we have politicians who are quite rich. You know, the richest man in Africa is from my country. Um, is what I think 13 or 14 billion dollars. At last time I checked. I don't know how much he's worth right now, but we have very rich like people, who go out there. They go to civilized nations. They go to um, you name it, right? The US, Canada, anywhere you go to, you see Nigerians, right? And they see how things are done there. They see how orderly um, those cities and states are, civilizations are. And yet, when they get back here, it's like they just switch back to whoever they were before they left. So for example, I can paint a classic example for you. You will see uh, um, people who, when they get to foreign countries, right, they'll follow the rules, they will line up, they'll queue, just be good citizens, model citizens. But the moment the same people enter the plane and they are landing here, they turn back to to this hustling slash
inconsiderate.
Yeah, mentality. And you ask yourself, this is the exact same set of people that were in the plane just a few hours ago, and they were orderly and they were well conducted. And when they got into this atmosphere, they just like reverted, So it got me thinking, like, because you see, whatever that is at the root of why, you have, the kind of disparate power dynamic that we have currently. I think that speaks a lot. Maybe it's because we didn't fight in the world wars. Maybe we don't have. Maybe the reason I'm saying that, like, for example, maybe we fought in a world war or something like that, right? We would have a very strong sense of patriotism, I guess, to our country. But in Nigeria, almost all of that is gone, and it's kind of sad. Well, yeah. So, but it now begs that, okay, now let me preface this by saying that Black people are intellectuals, okay? Like, you have me, you have you, just off the top of my head, you had people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, let's not even go there. But why is it that, it's not common among Black people to be known for intellectual pursuits or intellectual achievements? I don't know if you've thought about that.
I talk about it all the time. I'll talk about it to my girlfriend probably 3 times a week. My girlfriend is Vietnamese, and so, like,
okay,
we talk about racism all the time, right? We talk about our differences all the time, and my answer is this: as a child, I remember being asked to draw a picture of what we wanted to be when we grow up, okay? And I was raised in a mixed or interracial neighborhood. All the white kids, the majority of white kids, they would draw pictures of firemen, nurses, doctors, police officers. The typical jobs that you see on commercials and movies and television shows that white people work, right? Now, the Black kids, they drew pictures of football player, basketball player, singer. Okay? I drew a picture of a guy building robots because every night I would fall asleep to Star Wars. So, but I think that's the answer, or at least that's my answer to your question.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain my
It does.
It doesn't.
Hear me
Think
out.
about it.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
Okay.
Why is it that the Black kids draw pictures of entertainers?
Because those are the people they see on TV.
Exactly. This is what's marketed to them by the media. I will keep on using the term socially conditioned. Okay. Back in those days, right? And I even say, even today, I still think that it's not common to see a 20-year-old Black man specifically being surrounded by beautiful women and money, and they are the CEO of a architectural firm, or they're an aeronautical engineer, or anything that is respectable and recognized for requiring a high level of intelligence. Very rarely where you see a Black man depicted that way by the media. What you will see is you'll see stacks of hundreds on the table and Black men making it rain in a rap video or in a movie depicting narcotics. You will see that all the time. children are viewing that all the time, and they develop a mental connection of this is what it means to be successful. I have to entertain or slang to have beautiful women, drive beautiful cars, and have hella money. Now, again, I'm speaking in an extreme, but there's truth to what I'm saying, and I stand behind it. You will not see the same amount of content being presented for someone being young, black, and successful, and they're doing something that is not entertaining, right? Again, very rare where you see someone that is surrounded by beautiful cars, beautiful women, have hella money, and again, they're doing something that requires significant amount of intelligence, that takes a significant amount of development and training. They don't depict us like that on television. They don't.
I agree with you, and in fact, to further buttress your point, you see, you and I, Scott, like you rightly said, you know, we're on different, well, we're completely different realities. You know, my own reality is very different. So in my own reality, we do have like that, have women and all of that. Like we have all of that here. I'm telling you, we have everything you can imagine. And I think to your point, we here are conditioned very differently. So when we watch the TV, when we check the news, we see black people that are doing exactly the things you're saying. So for us, it's not that much of a factor. And I think part of the reason too is part of that is the reason why if you meet any Nigerian in the US, they are very educated. You get what I mean?
Yeah, so I went to school with them. They all majored in power systems. I don't know why, but they were hella smart.
Yeah. So like you're right. I think the conditioning too is also part of it, because here we're not conditioned that way. So we don't, although that's starting to change with, you know, us getting access to US TV and all that, but it's still not as bad. Like the average person here has a BSc. That's how it is in Nigeria. Like it has gotten so bad that when we are interviewing, right, BSc is the minimum. Anything beyond BSc, they don't even consider you, right? Because almost everybody here goes to school. Like almost everybody here goes to university. Now, granted, they will not learn as much or as well as a university in, say, the US, you know, or a Ivy League college. Like the level of education is above average. Let me put it that way. However, I don't feel like, you know, there is this hunger, or there's this okay, I think I know why. It's not that there's no hunger for like intellectualism, but our sense of dogma is so strong, like probably, or our sense of lack of curiosity is so strong that, you know, even with all our education, like we don't want to even apply it. We just use it the way it was given to us. Essentially, we're not like the curious type. That doesn't mean I'm generalizing here, you know, saying that all Nigerians are not curious, but no, we still have a lot of curious people. It's just that they are not the it's not the mainstay, right? It's not common like that. And in fact, those of us that are even curious are usually the ones that go to the US or go to Europe and are doing stuff over there, you know. So I don't know, just scatter thoughts all over the place.
Yeah. Again, I think it's what we see that kind of influences what we're likely to become.
Yeah.
Okay. You expose someone to violence at an early age, and that violence becomes a lifestyle that they grow up with. There's a high probability that they're going to follow follow on that track. And it's just something that I don't have all the answers. I just have my personal opinion. But as long as you keep dividing people and giving them different content based on their physical differences, I think that's going to result in a certain type of lifestyle based on the differences that you chose to divide people on. So, I mean, I wish I could articulate that a different way, but
No, no, it makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense. I get it. I get it. Well, let's just. I think the solution really is just to, at least from my end anyway, is to sensitize people, like to make them to see how many people I can free from this dogma mentality. You know, so whoever I happen to come across here in Nigeria, I talk to them like, okay, the way your parents told you the world is probably not how the world is structured. Have you ever challenged some of your preconceived notions or stuff like that? And usually, like I can have a cousin that has been staying with me for the past like 3 months, and he was so dogmatic in his beliefs, that that there is actual voodoo, and that Africans, that we use our voodoo to get ahead and all of that. And I kept telling him that, look, this idea that you think there is some supernatural power that some has cooked up together that is holding you back, like you should do away with that. That there is a universe out there. There is scientists have discovered like new things. There are like things that we took, that dogmas that have been preached to us either by religion or whatever, that turn out to be false. And he's not like getting it. But of recent, he has like come around to like understanding some of these things, following some of the guys I follow, like deGrasse Tyson and all of that. So I believe it can be done. It's just that, why is it that it has the grip on our own culture is so strong that breaking it off is like a Herculean task.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it makes me seriously consider if the profession that I'm in, is it did me being raised in a mixed community, hence white and black, is that the reason why I'm kind of different from the stereotype? Right? Is that the reason why I'm severely technical and I'm very curious? Yeah, that's something I'm sure that probably contributed to it, because I had an opportunity to partake in two different cultures, right? I mean, I didn't have a huge amount of white friends as a child, but I had two, and I don't know, maybe that kind of contributed covertly to what I am today, of just having the ability to be open to what else is out there, even if it's not right next to me. IDK.
Yeah. I think that's pretty accurate, because even me too as well. Like when I was growing up, my dad was different. Yeah, I can say that he was different from like people of his own generation. Like he was an intellectual, and I think that influenced me too to follow those footsteps. But most of my cousins, most of my friends who weren't really, who whose parents weren't really into that, right? It kind of like carried over from generation to generation with them. So I found out that getting those people to appreciate some of these stuff that we talk about. Like for example, when I was in school and I used to talk about computers a lot, like everybody used to look at me funny, like, oh, this guy is weird, stuff like that. And no matter how hard I tried to like explain it to them, like there were a few of us, like maybe we formed a small clique of 3 or 4 guys, but other than that, the average person was pretty much oblivious, So I'm not. I know that sounded condescending. Now that I heard it come for a while, but it's really how I felt anyway at the time. So yeah, and I get the sense, like even traveling out, interacting with white folks, I get the sense that it's not to the same degree. That doesn't mean that there are no oblivious white folks, so there are, but it's a whole lot less. I don't know if that makes any sense. More like
Yeah, it does.
more like you can easily this idea of dogma doesn't grip them as much, you know.
I think I don't want to. I'm not sure what the alternative word is, but it's information is kind of prioritized, I think, in that culture where like education is prioritized, right? There's a lot of other things that are just different in the culture. So, for example, I'm not sure if you ever heard of the phrase "speak when spoken to," you know, as a child. And so that kind of communicates the message that you only speak when spoken to. You don't speak and share your thoughts to engage in conversation that will hopefully result in more information trickling in. Like you only speak when someone decides that they want you to talk, right? Which I think impacts the learning of a child. So I mean, I don't know. I think there's. I don't know.
I think so.
I'm tapping out, but it was good catching up with you.
Yeah. It's been too long actually. It's been too long.
Yeah. You need to get back to the States. Well, you said you never been in the States in the first place.
Yeah. I by the end of this year, I plan to move because right now, even like I said earlier, even my blog that I've curated very deeply, and even my channel too, where I wanted to be uploading. In fact, the one I want to do now is to upload like F# tutorials and also to do some machine learning tutorials as well in F#. But I've just not had the time, you know. So I plan to just, you know, simplify everything probably by the end of this year, and yeah, you will see me more often.
That's what's up. Cool. Well, it's been real. Thanks for accepting my invitation. I like talking, especially to people that care about the same things I care about. So
same here.
I don't know. I'm about to hit the stop broadcast button if there's nothing else you want to say. Do you have any speaking engagements coming up?
No, because no, I don't actually. Yeah, I've just been focusing on the new job and winding down the existing one that it takes almost 100% of my time. But very soon things will clear up.
I submitted a proposal for F# conference and they rejected me, and I was depressed for like the next 3 days. That was my first time submitting for a conference. So I don't know. I guess there's always next time.
Yeah, over here we say Bele.
What's that?
I say over here we'll tell you Bele. You know what that means?
No, Hakuna Matata.
No, Bele.
No, what does that mean?
It means it's. So the reason I wanted to use the word because it encompasses a lot of emotions, right? So when someone tells you Bele, it's literally it means sorry, but it doesn't translate the way sorry translates to in English. It kind of is a way of saying take heart, you will get better, it will be all right, something like that. Just imagine all of that mixed together in one word, you know.
Okay.
That's
in America we say man up.
No, man up is a bit harsh, I think. Like no, it's not that.
So all right, Odie.
Yeah, so but one last thing too is I don't think I understand how you feel, you know, getting depressed about the talk, but if you ask me, I'll say you just keep submitting, keep you know, maybe the talk content, make it even better and better, the title stronger and stronger, and you get it eventually. You know, it's just like when we started coding in F#. Like F#, if you remember, it wasn't so obvious in the beginning. You know, you try, you fail, but if you just keep at it, it's only a matter of time before you'll be like, one day you'll be like, oh, this wasn't so hard, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like being a virgin. Like sooner or later you'll turn into a pro. So
Absolutely.
no, so what I'm doing now is I try to record like half an hour to an hour every day of me just writing code and articulating my thought process as I do it. And
Mm,
that's worked out significantly because now when I interview, it's already rehearsed. I don't even have to
mm,
think that hard. I've already said it 3 or 4 times already. And
mm.
so that's a side effect. And so hopefully, when whenever I do give my first conference talk, it'll be so autopilot, like things will flow so naturally and fluid that, you know, hopefully I'll do well and I'll start getting invited out to international.
Yeah,
So hopefully I'll just stick with the program, focus on the process. And from what I hear, things should work out.
yeah, it will. It will. It will.
Yeah.
So thank you, Scott, for inviting me. I really appreciate the call. I know that sometimes I get wrapped up in my own little world, but once in a while, touching bases with you, it has really helped me. So I really enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Yeah, it's been real. I enjoyed it, and I'm hitting the stop broadcast button now.